Imagine a highlight reel that ends with handcuffs. On a night that began like another celebrity spectacle, lights, cameras, a boxing ring sponsored by influencers, the story has folded into something darker and quieter. Antonio Brown, once one of the NFL's most electrifying playmakers, is back on American soil and facing a second-degree attempted murder charge. He was located in Dubai, taken into custody by U.S. Marshals, and flown to New Jersey before officials confirmed he'll be moved to Miami to face the case tied to a shooting outside a boxing event in May. Reuters. What makes this more than a tabloid sidebar is the gravity of the allegation. Authorities say that during an altercation on May 16th, after a chaotic scene outside the celebrity boxing event promoted by Adin Ross, Brown allegedly grabbed a handgun and fired 2 shots at a man he had been in conflict with, striking the man with a grazing wound to the neck. The man, identified in reports as a jeweler who says he's known Brown for years, later told police he was struck near the neck. Surveillance footage and witness accounts prompted a warrant and a prolonged investigation. AP News, this arrest is the highest profile entry in a long line of off-field controversies that shadowed Brown's career after elite-level production on the field. By the time his last NFL snap came in 2021, his resume already included multiple All-Pro nods, a Super Bowl ring, and more than a decade of highlight reel catches. But Brown's name has also been linked to fights, allegations of violence, civil suits, and social media stunts that repeatedly made headlines. Those elements, brilliance and volatility, collide in this moment. AP News. The legal mechanics matter. The warrant reportedly called for a $10,000 bond and initially suggested house arrest until trial, a strange contrast to the severity of an attempted murder allegation, but Brown never turned himself in when the warrant was first issued. Once authorities confirmed his location overseas, U.S. Marshals coordinated his apprehension and return. Now that he's been booked in Essex County Jail, prosecutors in Miami will decide how to proceed, and the criminal process will begin its measured crawl. Arraignment, motions, discovery, and, if the state believes it can prove intent, a trial. CBS News, there's also the wider cultural feed to consider. Brown's life has long been a public narrative about talent testing the seams of professional sports culture. Fans remember the jaw-dropping catches and game-turning plays. Critics remember the controversies. Now, that contradiction is amplified. A man whose athletic feats once dominated sports conversation is suddenly recast in the language of criminal allegations and extradition logistics. For the NFL and its audiences, it's another reminder that the stories surrounding the game, fame, fallibility, and consequence are as consequential as anything on the stat sheet. Reuters. From a journalistic standpoint, this is a slow-moving story that will require patience and precision. The facts available today are clear enough to establish the headline: extradition, arrest, attempted murder charge, but they are not proof of guilt. Public records show the alleged shooting, cell phone video, and witness testimony reportedly exist, and Brown's social media statements from the time indicate he claimed self-defense and said he'd been assaulted. Those competing narratives will be parsed in court, and the legal standard, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, remains high. Treating accused and accusation with the same voice would be a mistake. Reporting needs to hold both the seriousness of the charges and the presumption of innocence in balance. AP News, consider the human fallout. If the allegations are true, a man who built a life and brand on speed and spectacle may face years behind bars. If he's exonerated, he'll still carry a public scar that changes endorsements, media opportunities, and how fans remember him. And for the alleged victim, who claims a painful and traumatic encounter and reportedly spent time jailed overseas while fighting accusations of his own, the case is not an abstract slogan, but a personal crisis. Courts don't close wounds, they adjudicate responsibility. Either way, this incident will ripple through families, teams, and the network of people who orbit professional sports. amp.miamiherald.com. There's also a procedural ripple the league won't ignore. The NFL's disciplinary system can act independently of criminal outcomes. The league has suspended players for conduct detrimental to the game, even absent criminal convictions. Brown's playing days were already effectively over, but teams, sponsors, and broadcasters watch these developments closely. A high-profile criminal case can chill commercial relationships and further isolate a player from the business side of athletics. For Brown, who has repeatedly reinvented his public presence with social media and side ventures, this legal saga threatens to rewrite his post-football narrative. AP News. What happens next is bureaucratic and cinematic at once. Expect court filings in Miami to surface in the coming days, charging affidavits, discovery requests, and scheduling orders. Defense attorneys will push for clarity, where evidence came from, what the surveillance actually shows, whether any statements Brown made are admissible. Prosecutors will weigh whether the available footage and witness testimony are strong enough to secure a conviction for a charge as serious as attempted murder, which in Florida can carry heavy penalties. Meanwhile, the public will ferret through social media clips, past interviews, and archived game footage, looking for a narrative that makes sense. Reuters. This is not a story that ends in a single tweet. It will unfold slowly, painfully, and with legalistic precision. For fans who love drama, the temptation is to assign meaning quickly, to vilify or vindicate based on incomplete frames. For anyone with a stake in fairness, the wiser posture is to watch how the evidence is presented in court, to hold reporters and commentators to standards of evidence, and to remember that criminal justice is a process designed to separate the heat of accusation from the coolness of proof. AP News. Final image, a man who once ran past cornerbacks now led in handcuffs from a plane, heading toward a courthouse rather than a stadium tunnel. Headlines will flash, clips will loop, and commentary will rage. But in the sterile rooms where judges and juries deliberate, the story will be stripped of spectacle and reduced to questions of fact. Who fired the shots, why they were fired, and whether the law can reconstruct intent from chaos. That's where the truth will live, not in the highlight reel, but in the evidence, the testimony, and the long, careful work of the courts. AP News. What happens when the house lights go down on a life you used to know like the back of your hand, when the crowd still remembers you as a comet, but the world now asks you to explain the shape of the fall? Picture Antonio Brown, bright, restless at the edge of headlines, and then imagine the blink. Dubai to New Jersey. Extradition papers, a courtroom calendar that used to be a locker room chalk talk. The image is small and terrible. A man in cuffs on an airport tarmac, the noise of a life turned procedural. The Washington Post in French phrases. He used to be a sound in motion, roots, jukes, the sudden silence of a defender who misread his feet. For a decade, he lived inside the narrow, electric world of the NFL. Pittsburgh, touchdown after touchdown, 7 Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl ring. Then his exits became louder than his plays. A walk off the field here, a legal scramble there, a public life that seemed to fray in slow motion. Tonight's chapter is one of the loudest. Extradited from Dubai to face an attempted murder charge connected to a chaotic night outside a celebrity boxing event in Miami this spring. The allegation is stark and specific. The images that followed were grainy, viral, and immediate. AP News. But this isn't a clip reel. This is a slow, complicated human thing. The event in May, a late-night fight promoted by an influencer, people in the crowd, the kind of place where fame and risk orbit each other, ended with gunshots and an accusation that would not evaporate. Witnesses and footage tied Brown to the scene. A scuffle, a gun taken from a security officer, a shot fired, a man grazed. The warrant later asked that he post bond and remain under house arrest. Instead, the story bird-flied into international jurisdictions and then came home again by force of law. Imagine being pulled across continents not by choice, but by paper, signed and stamped by strangers who treat your life as a docket to be processed. The Washington Post. There are faces in this piece you don't see just by reading the legal headline. There's the man who says he was grazed by a bullet, the one who claims a pendant was never returned, the security officers who swore they saw a gun change hands. There are also the bystanders, fans at a spectacle, influencers filming for clout, whose phones became evidence and who now watch footage on loop like a collective memory. These are messy, human intersections, arguments about stolen jewelry, claims and counterclaims, a scene where adrenaline